These are the cell organelle notes for Chapter 8. You should have two things in front of you. First, you should have the cell organelles note page. If you don't have that already, go get that from the Chapter 8 drawer. And you should go get a book and open it to page 258, 259. This is important because page 258 has the pictures of the animal cell, the plant cell, and a prokaryotic cell. So it has two eukaryotes, animal and plant, and our prokaryote. So you can see the pictures as we talk about this. It also has a list of all of the organelles we're going to talk about so that you can see them in the way the book describes them and in the way our notes are going to describe them. So make sure you have those things. So first off, all cells have organelles. If you don't already know what an organelle is a tiny piece of a cell that's going to help the cell function. Think about the word organelle, and it has that beginning of organ. Well, for us, organs are tiny pieces of us that help us function, right? We need our organs, like our lung and our heart and our brain. Well, cells are just tiny versions of us, and they have their own tiny organs. We call them organelles. A cell is only complete when it has organelles. Not necessarily all the organelles, but some of the organelles. So there are many different organelles in a cell. But first, you remember the two types of cells that we have, prokaryotes and eukaryotes? That should have been on the assignments before this. We're also going to split eukaryotes into two different groups of plants and animal cells. On your note sheet, it asks you to list some similarities and differences that you see between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. I want you to go ahead and pause the video and do a little bit of that now. You might want to use the picture in the book. You might want to go back and look at the sheet you've completed before, but I want you to look at your prokaryotes and eukaryotes and see the difference. For prokaryotes and eukaryotes, there should be some things that you should have written. If you didn't write these, make sure to write them down now. Prokaryotes are small. They are unicellular only. They're only made of one cell. Eukaryotes are bigger. It's a bigger cell, and they can be unicellular or multicellular. Look at that picture in 258. The prokaryotic cell is obviously smaller than the animal and the plant, which are the eukaryotic. Let's look at complexity too. The prokaryotic cell is simple, while the eukaryotic cells are complex. So they're a lot more complicated, which should make sense because eukaryotic cells make up complicated organisms. Right? If it's an animal and a plant cell, these cells make up all animals and all plants. A prokaryotic cell is basically only bacteria, and bacteria is pretty simple. Let's keep going into our notes and actually begin on some organelles. So here is a picture so you can see of our prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Just another example. The first organelles that we are going to discuss are in all cells. That means it's in a prokaryote, it's in a eukaryote, and it's even in our split between plant and animal. You should be able to see each of these functions on the picture and on the notes. So our first one is the cell membrane. The cell membrane is the outside of our cell, and it helps to keep everything inside the cell. It keeps everything in, and it protects our cell from all the things outside of it. You can see that an animal, a plant, and a prokaryotic cell have cell membranes. They don't all look exactly the same, but they all serve the same purpose. It is the outside, and it's going to hold everything in. The next organelle is our cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is the jelly-like liquid in the cell. It's going to fill all of the empty space and hold all the other organelles. So if you see, our prokaryotic cell doesn't list cytoplasm in our picture, but all of the yellow, all of the light yellow inside the cell membrane, all of that extra empty space, that's the cytoplasm. That's also listed on our animal cell and on our plant cell. Cytoplasm is just filling all of the extra space. It's called jelly-like, but I want you to know that that means there's a lot of water in there. So it's not a total solid because it has water attached, so it's jelly. It kind of moves with the cell, and it fills every empty space. The ribosomes are next. They make protein for our cells. Remember, we've talked about protein back in chapter 2, and I talked to you about how important protein was to remember, how we didn't want to forget about them. So ribosomes make proteins. Remember, proteins build things in our body. It's going to build our hair and our nails. It's going to build our muscles. It's going to build our blood. It's going to build our immune system. Well, it does those same things for our cells. It's going to build our cells up, and our cells will send the proteins out to our body to help build us. So when you need more hair, which we always do, our hair is always growing, the cells near our hair, specifically on your hair is in follicles. Follicles are just a bunch of cells. Well, those follicles make protein, and when they make the protein, they send it out and put it on our hair so that our hair can slowly grow. Our fourth organelle is DNA. But DNA is not technically an organelle. We include it here because a prokaryotic cell doesn't have anywhere to put its DNA. So we kind of have to talk about it separately. But DNA is not an organelle, it is an object. Now, if you look at our picture, a prokaryotic cell also has a cell wall. We're not including this here because an animal cell does not have a cell wall. And not all prokaryotes have a cell wall. That's only some. In plant cells, all of them have cell walls. So that one gets a little tricky. You should be on the back page of our notes now. We're moving on to the organelles that are only in eukaryotes, plants and animals. So we're taking out prokaryotes. None of these are in prokaryotes. And we're talking about eukaryotes only, plants and animals. Our first thing is the nucleus. The nucleus is the center of the cell. It's going to hold the DNA for eukaryotes, and it acts like the brain. So for eukaryotes, the DNA is in the nucleus. Back in prokaryotes, it just kind of had to hang out in the cytoplasm because they don't have a nucleus. But the nucleus is the center. On our picture, it's that bright purple circle. It acts as a brain. It holds all your DNA and protects it because your DNA tells you who you are. It tells you your body everything about you and what you need to survive. Now we've got two. These are a little rough. Rough endoplasmic reticulum and smooth endoplasmic reticulum. If you see in parentheses there, I've got ER. You can call them the ER. So it's the rough ER and the smooth ER, but the full name is endoplasmic reticulum. So these act like the highways of the cells. They're going to move things around. And the difference between whether it's rough or it's smooth has to do with what it's making and moving. So the rough endoplasmic reticulum, it's rough literally because it's studded with ribosomes. It has ribosomes attached to it. And ribosomes are a bunch of little circles. And so when they get attached to it, it's no longer smooth looking, it looks rough. It looks like it's been bumpy. And with ribosomes attached, it's going to move what the ribosomes make, which is protein. So the rough ER moves protein around the cell, now only on the inside of the cell. And the smooth ER, it isn't rough. It doesn't have anything on it. So it's going to move lipids. Remember, that's our fats around the cells. Now think about a highway for me, and this will help explain why we're calling it a highway in the first place. Can I go anywhere in the world on a highway? Can I go out there and get on the interstate and go anywhere in the world? The answer is no. I'm stuck on the continent. I can't go over huge bodies of water on a highway. I'm stuck within the land. I can go a lot of places, but I can't go past the land. Well, the ER can't go outside of the cell. He can go anywhere in the cell, but he's stuck inside the cell only. He can't go outside. So we call him the highway because he can go anywhere inside the cell, but he can't move things to the outside of the cell. If you want to move things to the outside of the cell, we have to use the Golgi body. The Golgi body, we call him the post office of the cell. Now think about a post office. Can I go to the post office and, with enough money, can I send a package anywhere in this world? Yes. I can send a package from here to China, from here to Australia. I can send one from here to Virginia. That's not that far. But the Golgi body lets me package up the proteins or the lipids from the smooth and rough ER, and then I can send them outside of the cell to wherever they're needed. So remember we talked about how the follicles up in our hair make our hair. Well, when they're done making proteins, they put them in a package from the Golgi body, and they send it outside of the cell to our actual hair. Now, one quick note on Golgi body. We call it the Golgi body but it has a lot of names. It can be called the Golgi body, the Golgi complex, or the Golgi apparatus. Doesn't matter which one you're calling them. It just matters that it has Golgi in the front. If it has Golgi, then it's the same guy. Our next object is the lysosomes. The lysosomes, we call them like the stomach of our cell. It's going to take all of the stuff that the cell takes in, and it's going to digest it and break it down for the cell. So it's quite literally like a stomach. It breaks down anything that comes inside the cell, especially dangerous stuff. So like when our cell gets invaded by bacteria when we're sick, the lysosome's job is to eat that bacteria and digest it and break it down and protect the cell from things that are going to harm it. The lysosome also helps by breaking down old organelles. So if our organelles get old, the cells make more, and then the lysosome breaks them down. The mitochondria is next. Now the mitochondria is the energy center for most of our cells. The mitochondria breaks down the food we eat to get energy out of it so that our cells can function. So we call the mitochondria, if you think back to middle school, a lot of times it was called the powerhouse of the cell. Well, it still is that, but we're going to actually talk about why it's the powerhouse and what it does. It's going to break down our food to give us energy. And this is for plants and animals. Both of us do this. So we both have mitochondria. I want you to think about your body for me. Do you think there's anywhere where you might need energy more than another place? Think about that. Where do you think in your body you might need more energy than the normal amount? Well, for me, one of my first thoughts is my brain and my heart and my lungs. Think about those. Those objects are constantly working. So they constantly need energy. Versus think about like the skin on your ears. Does that need a lot of energy? Probably not. The cells in our body that do more stuff with energy will automatically have more mitochondria in their cells because they need more energy. It's kind of cool how our body works like that. So when you need more energy in cells, those cells automatically make more mitochondria for you. One more. This one is in plants and animals, but it's a little bit different for both. This is the vacuole. The vacuole is used for storage. Now it's a little bit different how it's used. Plants have one really big vacuole. You can see that in the picture. It's this kind of light blue. And a vacuole for a plant holds water. That's really important because plants pretty much need water. They pretty much live on water. In fact, you ever noticed how when you don't water a plant, they start to wilt? They start to fall over? What's happening there is the vacuole inside a plant, when it holds water and is full of water, it helps the plant stand up straight. When the plant uses that water and doesn't have any more to fill its vacuole, it slowly falls over and it wilts. That's also why when a plant starts to not look so great and you water it, a lot of times it'll come right back up and be awesome because it filled its vacuole full of water and now it can stand up straight. Animals like us, we have a bunch of little vacuoles. You can see the tiny one as an example in the animal cell. There's a bunch of those. That's because animals are a little bit more complicated than plants. We don't need just water. We need food and water. And where there's food, there's going to be waste. So vacuoles hold a bunch of stuff for us. They hold food, water, and waste. So it's all storage, but it's all needed. Our next organelles are for plants only. Make sure to highlight that, plants only. Now I know I just said that the cell wall can sometimes be in prokaryotes, but we're going to focus in on what plants have. So two things that plants have, cell wall and chloroplast. So the cell wall is for plants only. It's a rigid structure. Look right there. Rigid means strong on the outside of the cell. And it's used for protection. Think about a plant. They don't have a whole lot going for them as far as protection goes. For us, for animals, we have bone. That can hold us up straight and can be used to protect our body from just falling apart, right? If we didn't have bones, we would just be kind of goo. Well, plants don't have bones. They have a cell wall, this hard structure all the way around each cell, and that helps give them strength and keeps them from just kind of falling apart. The next object is the chloroplast. The chloroplasts are all the little green guys in the cells, and that's actually what makes plants green, is chloroplast. These chloroplasts take energy from the sun and use it to make food. We can't do that. And we can't do that because we don't have chloroplast. This process is photosynthesis, and we're going to talk about photosynthesis pretty soon. But it's how they make food. They take sunlight and they make food. They can do that because they have those chloroplasts. Now, on your notes, the last thing I want to talk about just real quick is locomotion organelles. These can be used with any cells, but not every cell has them. You might want to write that off to the side. These locomotion organelles can be in any type of cell. So prokaryotes, eukaryotes can have them, animals, plants. But not every cell has these organelles, and that's okay. So these last two organelles assist with locomotion, and locomotion just means movement. So these help cells move. Now, not all cells need to move. Think about it. Some of the cells in your body, they probably shouldn't move, right? If our skin cells were moving, they'd probably leave us. It wouldn't be so good. We don't want our cells to move. But some cells need to move. Like in your throat. When you eat, you have cells with cilia on them that help push your food down. Cilia is our first organelle for locomotion. It has a bunch of tiny hairs on the outside, and that helps our cells move. An example is on the prokaryotic cell in our book. There's a bunch of tiny little hairs going all the way around it. Those are called cilia. So they kind of beat back and forth, and they all move, and that helps the cell move forward. The next one is a flagella. The flagella is again on the prokaryotic cell. It's one long whip projection coming off, and it spins like a propeller on a boat, and that helps push a cell forward. Not all cells have these things, only cells that need to move. So it's a lot of bacteria, a lot of prokaryotes have those. A lot of single-celled organisms have those because that's their only way to move. But for us, we have our legs. We can move ourselves, so our cells don't need these organelles as often. Okay, this should be the end of your notes. You should have everything on the note page, and I'm hoping you feel a little bit more comfortable with cell organelles. If you need to, go back and re-listen and rewrite some of your information. And when you're done, you do not have to turn this page in, right? It's your notes. I don't want it back from you. I do want you to keep it and use it for your next assignment.